cautious when something they'd half given up on comes back unexpectedly. "Are you okay?" "Yeah. I had a week that reminded me of some things about what it looks like to actually show up for someone." He paused. "I realized I haven't been doing that with you." Another pause, longer than quietly. "No, you haven't. But you're calling now." "I know. I'm sorry it took this long." The ocean went on below him. The wind moved through the grass at the cliff's edge. "Call me next week. We can actually talk." "I'll call. I promise." He put the phone in his pocket. Somewhere in Oregon, in a small house in Rosebud, a 13-year-old girl was sitting at a kitchen table doing homework. The bruise on the left side of her face had faded to almost nothing. She had slept through the night for the fourth night in a row, which Joy had noted with the quiet precision of someone keeping track of evidence. She had learned in a week that the world contained people like that. She had not known it before, not in her bones, not in the way that knowing something means you carry it with you and it changes the way you walk through rooms. She knew it now, and once you know a thing like that, you do not unknow it. Joy set a glass of milk on the table beside the algebra worksheet without comment. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Maya picked up her pencil and returned to the algebra. Outside, the November evening settled in quietly, the way the best kinds of ordinary. The man behind the gas station counter had called the police 3 times. 3 times the dispatcher had told him to wait. The girl on the concrete had not moved in 4 hours. Her left eye was swollen shut. Her lower lip had split in a thin, clean line that no one had bothered to clean. Her father had pumped his gas at 12:15, gotten back into the dark blue pickup, and driven east toward the mountains without looking back. Then a man in an old leather jacket pulled in on a motorcycle, and he saw her, and he did the one thing nobody had done in 4 hours. He sat down. A Wednesday afternoon in November, the sky over Harwick, Oregon had settled into the gray. The Pacific Northwest saves for days when it wants you to feel the weight of the season. Keanu Reeves pulled into Ridley's stop and filled just after 3. Alone, the way he preferred to be on these rides. No assistant, no security, just an old leather jacket, a small backpack, and the open road. When he dressed plainly, people didn't see a movie star. They saw a man who needed gas. He pulled up to pump number 2, cut the engine, and swung off the bike. That was when he saw her. She was sitting behind the base of pump number 3, which is to say she was not sitting in a place where people normally. Back against the metal, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around her shins, shoulders pulled inward like she was trying to make herself as small as the space would allow. She was 13 years old, though Keanu didn't know that yet. What he knew was that she was young. She was alone, and she was sitting on a gas station forecourt in 38 degrees weather without anyone nearby who appeared to be with her. He filled his tank and kept watching her. Dark hair, unwashed and loose, falling across the left side of her face in a way that might have been accidental or might not have been. A light blue hoodie with a tear along one shoulder. Worn sneakers, one with the lace still intact, one with the lace missing entirely. It was the sneaker without the lace that first made something shift in his chest. He finished pumping, replaced the nozzle, and walked toward her. Not quickly, just walking. The way you walk toward something you want to get a better look at without startling it. When he came around the side of the pump and saw the left side of her face clearly for the first time, he stopped. Her left eye was swollen nearly shut. The bruising had moved through the deep purple of its early stage and was beginning to show yellow at the outer edges, which meant it was more than a day old, which meant it had been left. Her lower lip was split, the kind of clean split that comes from impact, and the blood had dried into a thin dark line that ran along her jaw. Nobody had cleaned it. Nobody had put ice on the eye or closed the cut on the lip with so much as a bandage. Keanu stood very still for a moment. He had seen difficult things in his life. He knew the difference between the instinct to look away and the instinct to stay. What he felt looking at this child's face was not shock. It was the recognition that something was very wrong and that walking away was not something he was going to be able to do. He took 3 steps back and sat down on the low concrete curb beside the pump. Same level, no position of height, just a person sitting on the same cold ground. She noticed. She turned her head slightly and looked at him with her right eye. The one she could open fully, and the look she gave him was not the look of a frightened child. It was something more measured. The look of a 13-year-old who had learned through practice to assess the intentions of adults before deciding whether to react to their presence. She looked at his jacket. She looked at his hands. She looked at his face. He didn't say anything. Neither did she. The silence held. The cold pressed down on both of them equally. It was the absence of pressure that eventually made her speak. He hadn't asked her anything. He hadn't moved closer. He hadn't done the thing adults usually do, which is fill the silence with words that are really demands dressed up as concern. He had just sat down and stayed there. And sometimes that is the only thing that works. "You're staring at me." Her voice was flat. The way voices go flat when a person has been conserving cis emotional energy for a long time. "I noticed. I'll stop if you want." She looked at him again. "You're not going to ask me what happened?" "Not yet. Do you want me to?" She thought about that for a second. Actually thought about it, which told him something. "I don't know." "That's okay, we don't have to do anything right now." A car pulled in at the far pump. An older man who paid at the machine and left without looking in their direction. "His name is Brett," she said finally. "He's my dad." Keanu didn't change. His expression. He had learned that the worst thing you can do when someone is telling you something hard is to perform your reaction to it. "He left you here." Not a question. "He drove away." "I don't know where he went." "How long ago?" She glanced at the side before lunch. "It's been a while." He looked at his watch. 12 minutes past 3 before lunch meant she had been sitting on this concrete in this cold with that eye and that lip for somewhere between 3 and 4 hours. He didn't let that show on his face. "Is there anyone inside?" "The guy who works in there. He came out and asked if I was okay. He said he called the police." That was a long time ago. Keanu looked toward the station's glass front. He could see a young man behind the counter, early 20s at most, watching the forecourt with the expression of someone who had done the one thing he knew how to do and was now waiting for it to produce results. "What's your name?" "Maya." "Maya." "I'm Kanu." Something moved across her face. Not recognition exactly, but the beginning of a question she decided not to ask. "Maya, do you have anyone I can call?" Something shifted behind her right eye. Complicated and quick, like a door opening and closing. "My mom's gone. It's been almost 2 years. Car accident." He waited. "I have a grandma. Daddy. She lives in Rosebud, but I don't know her number." "Okay, we can find it." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're going to stay?" The way she asked it, not hopeful, just genuinely uncertain whether that was what was happening, was harder to sit with than anything else she'd said. "Yes, I'm going to stay." He stood up slowly and pulled a small first aid kit from his backpack. He crouched back down to her level and held it up. "Can I clean that up a little?" She looked at the kit, then at him. Then she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. He worked slowly. The way you work when the point is not efficiency but care. He opened an antiseptic wipe and told her it would sting before it touched her skin. She held completely still. Didn't flinch. Just looked at a fixed point somewhere past his shoulder and let him work. "You've done this before." "Done what?" "Held still through something that hurts." She didn't answer that, but something in her posture shifted, not relaxing, acknowledging. He was reaching into his jacket pocket to check his phone when the screen lit up and he saw a name in his contacts that he hadn't looked at in a long time. A friend he'd been meaning to call for going on 2 years now without a specific reason for the delay. Just quiet distance accumulates between people when neither of them does anything to stop it. He stared at the name for a second, then turned the screen off and put the phone back in his pocket. Some things you come back to. Maya, does this happen a lot? Your dad, does he do this a lot? A long pause. The kind of pause that is itself an answer. Then sometimes when he drinks, she said it simply without drama in the tone of someone stating a pattern they have long since stopped hoping will change. Does anyone know? A neighbor, a teacher? She thought about it. Mrs. is Wentworth next door. She saw my arm once back in the spring. She asked me about it and I told her I fell off my bike. A pause. I didn't fall off my bike. I know. She probably knew too, but she didn't ask again. He filed that away. The young man from inside the station had come out. Maybe 20. His name tag said Plur in the police. They said someone that was like 4 hours ago. I've called twice. He shifted his weight. I wrote down his plate number. Dark blue pickup, maybe a 2015 or 2016. He was arguing with her in the car before he stopped. Then he just pumped his gas and drove away. Left her standing right there. You did the right thing, Devlin. Can you go back inside? If the police call again, let them know someone is with her. Devlin nodded and went back in. Brett Calloway, Maya said quietly. That's his full name. He looked at her. She had been listening to everything, tracking every detail, the way people do when they have learned that information is the only currency that keeps you safe. Can I ask you something? She looked at him steadily. Are you afraid of what happens when the police find him? She was quiet, not because she didn't know the answer. Because she was deciding whether to give it. I'm afraid of what happens after. He understood what she meant. After was the part nobody talked about at the gas station. After is what we work on next. One thing at a time. She looked at him with that storm-colored right eye, measuring the gap between what he'd said and what he actually meant. Then she'd looked away again, but she didn't move further from him. Deputy Harlan Moss arrived 68 minutes after Devlin had made his first call. 28 years old, lean and precise, he pulled into Ridley's, saw a man sitting beside a teenage girl with visible injuries, and walked to Maya first, crouched down to her level the same way Keanu had done. Hey, my name's Heron. What's yours? That told Keanu what he needed to know about Harlan Moss. Maya answered him, not everything. Not yet, but enough. Enough to make Moss' jaw tighten in a way he was clearly working to control. Then Moss turned to Keanu. Sir, you with her? No, I stopped for gas. Can you walk me through what happened when you arrived? Keanu told him factually in sequence. He mentioned Devlin, the plate number, the name Brett Calloway, the 68 minutes. What happened there? Moss didn't get defensive. The initial call didn't come through with a priority flag. That shouldn't have happened, and I'm going to look at why it did. I'm telling you because you have a right to know, not because it changes anything that happened to her. That was the right answer. The patrol unit picked up the BOLO and found the dark blue pickup 15 miles east. Brett Calloway was at the county station within the hour. He was not being released that night. When Moss relayed that to Maya, something happened to her shoulders. Not a full release, a fraction of an inch of descent from where they had been locked since Keanu had first seen her. Doy Fenwick arrived at 6:53 in the evening in a Honda Civic that had clearly lived a full life and was not planning to stop any time soon. She was out of the car before it had fully stopped rocking. Early 7s, white hair pulled back. A winter coat over what appeared to be a house dress. Moving with the focused speed of someone who had been driving 90 minutes with one thought in her head, she crossed the forecourt in 6 steps. She gathered Maya into her arms the way people hold things that were almost lost, with a ferocity that is not about the strength of the grip, but about the depth of the relief behind it. Maya went into that embrace the way water goes downhill, all at once, completely without resistance. She still didn't cry, but she put her face against her grandmother's shoulder since it stayed there, and the quality of her stillness changed into something that was no longer about enduring, but about resting. When Doi finally straightened, she kept one hand on Maya's shoulder and turned to look at Keanu. She took in the old jacket, the small backpack, the absence of anything that announced who he was. "You stayed with her?" "Yes, ma'am." "How long?" "Long enough." She studied him. "Are you a good man?" It was a direct question. It deserved a direct answer. "Not always, but tonight I was." Something in Dottie Fenwick's face settled. She nodded once slowly and took his hand in both of hers. "Thank you," she said. The weight she placed behind it was not small. He gave her his number before they left and told her plainly. Brett would be released after his arraignment in the morning, and when that happened, they would need a lawyer before anything else. Then Doi said the thing that would stay with him. Brett's younger brother, Travis. He's more dangerous than Brett. Brett loses control when he drinks. Travis plans when he's sober. 2 years ago, when Brett was picked up for a DUI, Travis came for Maya. Stayed 3 weeks. The court couldn't stop him because he's family. There's no protective order that covers Travis. Only Brett. She let that land. Keep your doors locked tonight. If Travis shows up before you have a lawyer, call 911 first and me second. Doi nodded and guided Maya to the car. He stood and watched the Honda's taillights until they disappeared around the curve of the road. He took out his phone and found the number for the nonprofit organization that provided legal support for domestic violence victims in Oregon. He'd funded them quietly 2 years back through a third party, the kind of work that helps people in the space between the emergency and the recovery. The director called him back at 11:47, a woman named Claire, who apparently did not observe standard business hours. He told her everything. She listened. The first lawyer she suggested, Marcus Held, the best family law attorney in Harwick County, turned the case down at 7 the next morning. He cited his schedule. There was a half step of hesitation when he said the word, the Calloway family. Do they have a history in the local legal community? I'm not able to speak to that, which was itself a kind of answer. He called Claire back. I should have thought of that. The Calloways have roots, they're going back a long way. You need someone from outside. The someone was Simone Aldrich, 40s, Port family law, specialized in complex custody situations involving documented abuse. She picked up on the second ring. He told her everything. The gas station, Maya's face, the 4 hours, Dellen's call that took 68 minutes, the conversation with Doi, Travis. He told it in sequence without editorializing. Simone did not interrupt. When he stopped, she said, "Where is the child right now?" "At her grandmother's house, Roserberg. Doors locked. She's safe." "And?" "The father is at the county station. Arraignment is this morning. He'll be released afterward. Misdemeanor domestic charge." The brother, Travis, tell me again what the grandmother said. He told her again. All right. The way she said, it had the weight of a decision rather than an acknowledgement. I'll be there before 8 o'clock. That's a 3-hour drive from Portland. Then I'd better leave now. A pause. I'm not asking who you are. It doesn't matter to the case. But I want you to know that the reasons I'm getting in my car at this hour is not because of who's calling. It's because of what you described. That's a child who's been failed by every system that was supposed to catch her. And it sounds like she's been failed for a long time. He sat with the phone in his hand for a few seconds. Then he called Di. She answered on the first ring, which meant she hadn't slept. Maya had eaten something the night before. Then she'd just gone out like a light on the sofa, and Doi didn't have the heart to move her. Maya had asked about him before she fell asleep, asked if he was still going to be around. "I'm going to be around, and I have a lawyer coming. Her name is Simone Aldrich. She'll be at your house before 8. He heard Doi exhale. The particular sound of someone who has been holding something for a long time and just felt the weight shift slightly. "But Dai, I need to ask you something. Everything you know about Travis. I need all of it." What followed was 30 minutes of conversation he mostly listened to. Travis Calloway was 39. 2 prior arrests, both reduced through plea arrangements. Lived 4 miles from Brett his entire adult life. Showed up to church on Sunday. Knew the names of everyone on the county board of supervisors, brought food to neighborhood events. He didn't raise his voice once the entire 3 weeks 2 years ago. Doi said he never threatened me. He never said anything I could point to. He was just very quiet and very certain, and the system looked at him and saw a responsible adult. And Maya, she didn't say much. She never does. But when she came back, she didn't sleep right for a month. And she stopped asking me to leave the light on in the hallway, which she'd always done before. She'd learned not to ask for things. There's one more thing. 10 months ago, Mrs. Wentworth, the neighbor, filed a concern report with Child Protective Services. Keanu went still and someone came out, a caseworker. She went to the house. She spoke with Maya and she closed the file. Said there was no evidence. Doi's voice flattened. Maya told me later that Brett had talked to her before the woman came, told her what to say. Maya knew exactly what she was supposed to say and she said it. The caseworker's name, Stegman. Carol Stegman. He wrote that one down. The Callays were rich in the way certain families in certain small communities are rich. Deep roots, long memories, the kind of relationships that are never written down because they don't need to be. The county board member who'd been to Travis's cookout. The supervisor who'd gone to school with Brett, a system that processed things a certain way, not because anyone gave an explicit instruction, but because everyone involved understood without being told how things were supposed to go. That was the kind of mother with an old Hinosa Civic. And no lawyer went up against the loan. Travis Calloway arrived at Dai's house at 10:23. Keanu was at the kitchen table with his second cup of coffee when Doi said quietly, "He's here." A late model pickup, clean, dark green, the kind of truck that said working man without saying anything that could be held against you. Travis stepped out with the deliberate ease of someone who had decided before he arrived that he was not going to appear to be in a hurry. Shorter than Brett, leaner, a face that was almost pleasant. The pleasantness sitting slightly in front of something else, like a screen door that lets you see into the room without quite letting you in. He had dressed like a man who intended to be looked at and found reasonable. Keanu opened the door before Travis had reached the porch. Travis stopped at the base of the steps. He took in the old leather jacket, the plain clothes. Something moved behind his eyes that was not quite contempt, but was in the same neighborhood. "I'm here to see my niece. I'd appreciate if you'd let me in." Ma's inside with her grandmother and her attorney. "I'll let them know you're here." Something shifted in Travis's expression. He hadn't expected the word attorney. "I have every right to be here. I'm family. You're on a public street. That's where you are. I know who you are. I looked you up this morning. I thought it was strange a man like you getting involved in something like this. Then I figured it out. You were looking for a story, a tilt of the head. Is that what Maya is to you?" "No, she's a 13-year-old who spent 4 hours on a gas station floor with her face in that condition while her father drove away. That's what she is." Travis's jaw tightened. "Brett has problems. I won't pretend otherwise, but this isn't helping her. Du is 71. She lives alone. She's on a fixed income, She is not in a position to provide a stable environment for her child. And the court is going to recognize that I have a home. I have a stable income. I have a clean record, a pause. And I have the resources to make sure Maya gets what she needs. Resources that certain people in this situation do not have. There it was. The point delivered plainly. I'll tell you what I have. Keanu said, I have a 13-year-old who, when I asked her whether what happened to her face happened a lot, did not say no. I have a neighbor who's been writing things down in a journal for almost a year. I have a doctor's visit from 9 months ago that was recorded as a bike accident, and I have an attorney who filed an emergency protective order this morning that includes your name. Travis went very still. The front door opened behind Keanu. Simone Aldrich stepped out onto the porch. Mr. Calloway. My name is Simone Aldrich. I represent Di Fenwick and Maya Calloway. An emergency protective order was filed on Maya's behalf at 8:47 this morning. Your name appears in that filing by reference to your prior conviction for assault and your documented history of seeking access to Maya during your brother's legal difficulties. Until a judge has reviewed it, I'm advising you to step back from this property. Travis looked at Simone. He looked at Keanu. He looked at the door still open behind them both. You drove up from Portland for this. Someone with resources called you. His eyes moved back to Keanu, and you're standing here in that jacket like you're just a regular person who stopped for gas. I did stop for gas, and now you're in the middle of a private family situation. You think you can drive into a place like this and change the way things work? We've been here 3 generations. You know what? You are here. You're a weekend. You're going to get back on that motorcycle and ride away, and the rest of us are going to still be here. Keanu waited until he was sure Travis had finished. You're probably right that I'm going to ride away eventually, but the protective order stays when I go. The journal stays. The doctor's records stay. The attorney stays. The things that are true don't leave with me. Travis held the look. Then he looked past both of them at the front door. The door had opened slightly. No one had touched it from the outside. Maya stood in the gap. She was wearing Doy's cardigan, the sleeves too long. She looked at Travis first. Her face went completely still, sealed, all the information moving inward. The particular expression a child develops when they have learned that certain people read their reactions like instructions and use them accordingly. She gave Travis nothing. Then she looked at Keanu. Her face changed. Not dramatically, but something in it opened by a fraction. The way a door opens when the latch is finally released. For just a moment, the exhausted, careful, ancient-eyed 13-year-old behind all the composure was simply visible. Then she stepped back and pushed the door mostly closed again without having said a single word to Travis. Travis had seen it. The understanding did something to his expression he did not quite manage to hide. This isn't over. No, Simone said pleasantly. It isn't. I'll see you in court. Travis walked back to his truck. In the days that followed, the architecture of what had been hidden began, piece by piece, to come into the light. Mrs. Wentworth opened her door to him on Thursday afternoon. Reading glasses pushed up on her head. The slightly startled expression of someone interrupted by the world. When he told her why he was there, her hand stopped moving on the door. There's an attorney working on Maya's behalf. She needs to hear from people who observed Maya over time. Not one incident, a pattern. Mrs. Wentworth looked at him for a long moment. Something moved through her face. The complicated interior weather of someone working through guilt and relief and the belated recognition that the moment they had been both dreading and waiting for had finally arrived. Come in. She had kept a journal, a small spiral loop book from the drugstore, kept in the drawer of her bedside table because she hadn't known what else to do with what she was seeing. Dates going back 11 months, the 2 times she'd seen bruising that hadn't been there the day before. The one time she'd heard sounds from the Calloway house late at night and had stood in her kitchen for 10 minutes with the phone in her hand, deciding she had decided against calling each time. She said that to him directly without being asked. I told myself it wasn't enough. I told myself I couldn't be sure, but I was sure. I just didn't know what sure was worth in a situation like that. He didn't tell her she was wrong to have waited. He understood why people waited. He also understood that the journal was going to matter considerably. Dr. Parrish's office was on Dunor Street. Keanu did not go inside. He called instead, identified himself only by his first name and asked to speak with the doctor directly. When Dr. Parrish came on the line, his voice had the careful quality of someone who knew why he was being called and had been waiting for the call while hoping it wouldn't come. An attorney representing Maya will be contacting your office formally with a subpoena request for the records from the visit 9 months ago. I'm not asking you to do anything outside the legal process. I'm just letting you know it's coming. A long pause. The visit is in our records. I imagine your clinical notes are also in your records, including whatever you observed that didn't make it into the official documentation. Another pause. I'll be available to speak with the attorney. That was enough. On Friday morning, Brett Calloway stood across the street from Harwick Middle School, not approaching the building. Not violating the protective order, just standing, leaning against the door of his pickup with the deliberate visibility of a man who knew exactly where the legal line was drawn and was standing just on the other side of it. Principal Abra called Doy. Du called Kanu. He pulled to the shoulder of Highway 18 and stopped. He thought about turning around, about driving back to Harwick, about placing himself where Brett could see him. About doing something real in a situation where most of the real things were happening on paper. He didn't do it. If he showed up and there was any kind of exchange, any word that could be framed as provocation. The most useful thing he could do was stay on the shoulder of the highway and trust that Moss would get there and Abra would protect Maya and Simone would turn what was happening into something that mattered in court. Moss arrived in 11 minutes. The two men exchanged words that were civil and brief. Brett got back in his truck and drove away with the unhurried ease of a man who had accomplished exactly what he came to accomplish, which was not to see Maya, but to make sure Mia knew he was able to. Moss put everything in the record. Keanu picked Maya up from school that afternoon. She got into the car, set her backpack between her feet, and was quiet for the first stretch of the drive. Then he was outside. Backpack between her feet, and was quiet for the first stretch of the drive. Then he was outside. You saw him? Mrs. Reyes moved us to the back of the classroom to do a lighting exercise. She made the air quotes flat and precise. Mrs. Reyes doesn't do lighting exercises. She does reading comprehension as she saw us sit in assigned seats. I figured it out. I'm sorry you had to. It's not your fault. He wasn't there to see me. He was there to make sure I knew he could be. Yeah, that's what Simone thinks, too. Does it help for the case? Does the fact that he did that count for anything? Simone is filing paperwork right now that makes it count. The protective order is going to be extended to include your school. So, it helped. Not with satisfaction. Just working through the logic. It helped. The call from Simone came that evening. 2 things. The emergency supplement was approved. The protective order now covered the school and a 500-foot radius around it. And Carol Stegman had called her voluntarily. She said she'd been notified by her director that the Department of Human Services had identified procedural irregularities in her case closure. She said she wanted to cooperate fully. Simone paused and then she said something I wrote down word for word. She said, I saw it. I wrote it down in my notes and then I didn't put it in the report. I told myself it wasn't enough, but it was enough. I knew it was enough. Keanu stood on the porch in the November dark and didn't say anything for a moment. She knew. She knew. Her clinical notes have already been pulled. They document a bruise on Maya's forearm inconsistent with the fall she described. Hesitation pattern Stegman noted as possibly coached. All of it in the notes, none of it in the report. He went back inside. Maya was on the sofa with her knees pulled up and a cup of tea balanced on one knee. He sat down at the other end, leaving space between them. He told her about the order. He told her about Stegman. Something moved through Maya's face that was hard to name. Not relief, not vindication. Something closer to what it feels like when you discover that a thing you lived through alone was witnessed after all. That the record of it existed somewhere, even if it had been kept in the wrong place for too long. She knew. She knew. Why didn't she say something? He thought about how to answer honestly. She was part of a system with certain pressures in it. The pressures were pointing in one direction and she went that way. She wrote the truth down somewhere nobody was going to read it. People do that. They keep the truth somewhere private because acting on it feels too hard or too uncertain, and then something shifts and they find a way to bring it out. Does that make it okay? No. But it makes it human. And right now, the fact that she kept the notes at all, even in the wrong place, is what's going to help you. Maya was quiet. Outside, Daddy had the radio on in the kitchen. Can I ask you something? Yeah. Why are you still here? It's been 3 days. You stopped for gas. You didn't have to stay the first night, and you definitely didn't have to still be here now. I'm not complaining. I just want to understand it. He thought about the honest answer, not the one that sounded good, the actual true one. Because I sat down on that concrete next to you. And you told me something true in a situation where you'd probably learned that telling people true things didn't usually produce anything useful. And I didn't want to be another person who heard something true from you and then left. She looked at him. That's it. That's it. She looked back at her book. Something in her posture changed. Not dramatically, just the small adjustment of someone who has set down something they've been carrying without quite realizing how long they'd been carrying it. He noticed. Brett's attorney called Simone's on Sunday morning to discuss a consent agreement. Mandatory counseling twice weekly with a third-party supervisor reporting to the court. Random alcohol testing unannounced. Zero contact with Maya outside of formally scheduled supervised visits. The supervised visits would not begin until a 90-day review confirmed he had met every prior condition. All of them, not most. Why is he doing this now? Because the pattern evidence is too strong. Stegman's notes. The journal. Dr. Parrish's records came back yesterday and are significant. His attorney knows what we have and what Judge Delaney is going to do with it. A consent agreement, if the conditions are hard enough, is actually stronger than a contested order in some ways. He signs it willingly. Any violation is unambiguous. The conditions are real. I wrote them. They're not soft. Brett Calloway signed the consent agreement on Monday morning. By 10, the paperwork was filed and entered into the court record. Travis's separate filing went through the same afternoon. His name was now formally on the protective order. That evening, Simone sat at Dottie's kitchen table one last time. There was a question, she said, that wasn't legal. It was Maya's about whether she ever wanted to see her father again under safe conditions if he actually met them. Du went to sit with Mia in the living room, just the two of them. The door pulled almost closed. Keanu waited in the kitchen. He could not hear what was said. He could hear the murmur of it. He sat at the table and looked at the grain of the wood and thought about the gas station for court and the sneaker without a lace and 4 hours of concrete. About Mrs. Wentworth's phone in her hand, deciding not to call. About Stegman writing the truth in the wrong place for 10 months until someone finally opened a door she could walk through. The living room door opened. Du came back. Her eyes were bright in the way that goes past tears. She said if he actually changes, she'll think about it, but she's not going to decide until she can tell the difference between him changing and him pretending to change. Simone set down her pen. Something moved across her face that her professional neutrality did not quite cover. Tell me those words again. Exactly. Du repeated them. Simone wrote them down. I want those words in the compliance record, not as a legal condition, as context, as the statement of the person this entire proceeding is about. A 13-year-old who has already learned the difference between change and the performance of change. That's the person Brett Calloway is going to have to earn his way back to, if he ever does. He left the next morning before 7. Maya was already at the kitchen table when he came down. Both hands around the glass of orange juice, wearing a sweatshirt he hadn't seen before. She looked up when he came in and didn't say. Someone who wasn't there to get something out of it. Every adult I've met stopped and helped wanted something. Credit or a story or a feeling about themselves. You didn't seem to want any of that. You just sat down. Thank you for not making it about you. Maya folded inside the letter was a drawing. She had done it in pencil on the same kind of spiral notebook paper. 2 figures sitting on the ground beside a gas station pump. One large, some small. The same level. No height between them. No caption, no label. There was only one moment in the history of either of them that it could be. He sat at his desk and looked at the drawing for a long time. Then he folded it carefully along the original creases and put it in his wallet where he kept the things he needed to have with him on ordinary days. The following weekend he rode north. No itinerary. The coast road, Highway 1, curving up into 101. He found a pull-out on a bluff where the highway curved inland. No sign, no name, just the wind and the sound of the water a long way down. He killed the engine and walked to the edge. Then he reached into his jacket and took out his phone. He opened his contacts and found the name he had seen on the screen that first Wednesday in Harwick. The friend he had not called in almost 2 years. No falling out, no specific reason, just the way distance accumulates when you don't do anything to stop it. He pressed call. It rang 3 times. Then a voice he recognized immediately. Hey, Keanu said, I know it's been a while. I just wanted to hear your voice, but pause. Cautious the way people are.